since the continent of Africa was colonized, it's still dealing with the vestiges of a colonial mentality. It's still recovering from 450 years of slavery. So Africa is in recovery mode. Even Africans themselves have little understanding of African history and culture. I know continental Africans who know nothing about the history and culture, continental Africans on the West Coast who know little about the history and culture on the East Coast, who don't understand that it's part of the same culture. Professor Sheikh Diop talked about the cultural unity of Africa. There's also a spiritual unity that undergirded the cultural unity of Africa. There's a protege of Diop by the name of Mbaki who wrote a book called Paths from the Nile. Paths from the Nile. And in that book, he talked about the fact that when the people of Kemet came to the realization that Kemet was going to fall, and that with the fall of Kemet, that would mean that all of the knowledge, 2,500 years or more of historical, cultural, scientific, philosophical, spiritual information was potentially going to fall into the hands of the coming invaders, the Arab invaders, the European invaders. And they knew that that knowledge was too important, too powerful to allow to fall into the hands of infidels. And so decisions were made by the priests and priestesses in Kemet to parcel up that information and to ship it to West Africa during the course of 6 different migrations. And that knowledge, parcels of that knowledge, were taken to Senegal, which influenced the development of Wolof culture and traditions. Other pieces of that information were taken to Ghana, to Benin, to Togo, and influence to Nigeria, and influence the Ga community, the Yoruba traditions. And the last piece of that information went into Mali and influenced the Dogon culture. So we have branches of Kemetic astronomy, psychology, science, mathematics, kingship patterns, and others that have been integrated into cultures in West Africa. So what we know, those who have studied the subject matter know, is that the world is indebted to Nile Valley culture and civilization, and that Europeans understand that clearly, and that is the primary reason why they have co-opted Nile Valley studies. That is primarily the reason why they had to remake the image of King Tut in the image of a white man, why they had to remake the image of his mother Nefertiti into a white woman. Why they relegate of the 30 dynasties in Kemet, they relegate the 25th dynasty to black folk, the Kushite dynasty or the Negro dynasty. So that is a lie. That is a falsehood that is disappearing right before our very eyes. And so it's important for us now, as we move throughout a period of cultural memory restoration. It's important for us to know the real history of our culture and civilization, the real history of our tradition, not the European reimaginings of what Africa was and was not. But look at Africa through the eyes of African people, continental Africans and African Americans, and then begin to put the pieces of this puzzle together to reconstruct this memory, to reconstruct this history so that we can see who we really are and then live up to our potential as African people, whether we're in America, West Africa, South Africa, or East Africa right now. Because there's many Africans in the Nile River Valley who have succumbed to the conquerors of the Islamic tradition, who believe more in Allah than they do their African ancestors. There are Africans in Ethiopia who believe more in Solomon and Jesus than they do Asar and Aset. So we've got a lot of work to do to undo that brainwashing, but the work is being done now, and that I can foresee in the near future. And the near future means somewhere between the next 200 and 500 years, a dramatic shift in consciousness. And once that shift takes place, then the world is going to be turned right side up. order will be restored, and African people will be in their proper place in order to continue our great and mighty walk, as Dr. John Henry Clarke referred to it.